the show. But Craig, first off, and Garrett, let's just get this out of the way with Greg Sankey in the NCAA tournament. An interview with Pete Thamel today. Greg Sankey, in regards to the NCAA tournament, said, "Nothing remains static. I think we have to think about the dynamics around Division I in the tournament." He added that recent runs by UCLA from the first four to the Final Four in 2021 and Syracuse's run to the round of 16 beginning with a play-in game in Dayton in 2018 show the caliber of power conference teams on the fringe of the NCAA tournament. That just tells you the bandwidth inside the top 50 is highly competitive. We are giving away highly competitive opportunities for automatic qualifiers from smaller leagues, and I think that the pressure is going to rise as we have more competitive basketball leagues at the top end because of expansion. This shouldn't surprise anybody but Greg Sankey. He is all about exclusion and not inclusion when it comes to things. And his basketball conference, and he's doing this from a position of strength because for years the SEC was kind of Kentucky and everybody else, or a good team and everybody else.
Florida won a national title.
Florida, but it was Florida and everybody else. But it's been a long time.
It's been 2 years. Yeah.
It's been
not for Florida. It's been a while though.
It's been since 2012, and Kentucky had that great run,
right.
And the SEC's not been really relevant deep into the tournament all that much. And now they're in a position of strength. Auburn's good. Tennessee's good. Kentucky's good again. Go on down the list. Alabama's good. They've got really good basketball teams. Texas, routinely good, coming into the league. Oklahoma, routinely good, coming into the league. So their basketball swagger has grown, obviously, here. And he's speaking from more of a position of strength than he would a couple years ago. And notice he didn't mention an SEC team in this. But his point being that as these leagues expand, then their schedules will get tougher, as where the other leagues, their schedules won't get tougher. So we're giving automatic qualifiers to these leagues where other teams are playing tough ones. Well, I say tough crap, Greg, because you've chosen this path, and the tournament's great how it is. Now, this is also maybe cushioning the blow for none of us want the tournament to expand, really, but they're going to expand it, and this is the reason why. So, this is Greg Sankey telling you how he's going to ruin the NCAA tournament, essentially.
Well, Greg Sankey, as I'm going to refer to him from now on, he's made his points very clear here lately, and I saw a comment before I got over of Greg Sankey is pulling the mask off now. Folks, he never had a mask on. It was just the fact that some media covered him and helped perpetuate the ideas that he had what's best in mind for college athletics as a whole. I do think that in his mind he probably thinks that what's best for college athletics as a whole is for his league and another league to basically go and do whatever they want like it's a game of Risk and they take over the whole board. And that's basically what they've done with very calculated moves over the last several years. And to their credit, a mastermind of a plan that's needed some others to contribute. And it's gone, I think, probably about as well as you could possibly imagine. I mean, look how quickly things have changed. And all of a sudden we're talking just 3-4 years ago about possible expansion. And now here we are, and Greg Sankey's basically dictating what terms they want for the NCAA tournament. And you do have more spots when you add more teams that would normally take those spots. So, yeah, you're at 16 schools now. Guess what? If you go add more, you'll probably need more spots because you're going to have more teams. Like, everybody's getting bigger, so of course you want more spots because you have more teams to accommodate. So, yeah, I mean, this has been just a masterful job of again, I give credit to whoever years ago started concocting these plans behind the scenes. He certainly had to be a part of it to some extent. I know there's been others along the way. I don't think there's like some Illuminati group that's all been together this entire time because Kevin Warren was very fleeting, although he had a profound effect. But just whoever's like kind of guiding them through this, it just feels like it's a James Bond level villain plot of how they've been able to just swoop in, not behind the cover of darkness really, but with a little like smoke and mirrors, and then just out front because nobody can do anything about it, and just move their pieces around now. And now they don't have to hide it. There was no mask ever on, but if you thought that there was, like now, yeah, there's absolutely none, and they can basically go out and say what they want, and who's going to fight back? I mean, as we saw yesterday with the apparent agreement with the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, Big 12, everybody, G5 getting on board with the new playoff payouts. I mean, if you couldn't get any extra inch as a Big 12 or an ACC school with that, why are we to believe that you're going to get it anywhere else? Now, if you could, you would think it would be basketball. But the issue with basketball is that Brett Yormark also wants this. Why? Because that's where they can actually make a little bit more money, and they're also adding teams, so they want more teams into the tournament because that's, quite frankly, the only place where the Big 12 can really make a dent. Problem is, the Big 10 and the SEC are going to continue to make dents as well because they're adding teams. So, yeah, I mean, this is just the continued takeover by some very calculated, smart, and power-hungry, greedy people at the top of a couple of conferences and the top of TV networks, and we're seeing it in real time, and it's happening just so quickly. I think that's what's making it so hard to wrap our heads around. But, yeah, the NCAA tournament expansion seems inevitable. We've heard Yormark talk about it. Now we're hearing Sanki talk about it. I'm sure others have commented on it as well. So that's going to happen, and I'm not in favor of it. We all laid that out the other day. We like the tournament the way that it is, but I guess if you need that few extra $1,000 or $1 or $2 million or whatever the case may be, you're going to go and grab that when you can. And certainly now is the time to go and shake up things because everything's being shaken right now. So, yeah, just more change and more wondering like what this all looks like on the other side of it all.
Yeah, I do like it's like a James Bond villain, like where he gets to the climax of the movie. And it's
Greg
like,
Sankey, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, hello, Mr. Bond. You may think you've got me now,
Yeah.
but my tentacles spread across the world.
Yeah. Oh, college football fans, you thought I really cared about you? I only care about my 16 teams or whatever. Yeah.
You can stop me if you want. You can kill me right now. But what does that do for the 14 nuclear weapons I have placed around the world that will go off at the stopping of my heart? Like that kind of a thing, you know.
I mean, dude, when you see his Twitter and sometimes he's quoting like whatever, like book or whatever. I mean, I think there's. I don't want to give him too much credit, but I think that he's kind of been showing his hand the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of whether you picked up on it or not. I'm not going to say he's an evil genius, but I do think that just the way this is all unfolded, just so many little levers had to be pulled and the timing had to be so right. I mean, for the last 3 years, just everything that's happened, but they've played it beautifully, and that's why they're going to, get the dividends of it all.
And look, if a couple more, like if Oklahoma can beat Florida a couple, years back in a national championship game, if Ohio State wins more, if any team from any conference, like
Texas beats Alabama,
Texas beats Alabama.
And then, even then, who knows? It might not have mattered.
But even still, like the narrative that he was able to spin about football was because of their continued dominance in that, like winning national championships. Had anyone really knocked them off that pedestal a little bit to where instead of having like 15 of 20, if they had like 8 of 20, then, or maybe even just 10 of 20, his argument would not be nearly as strong.
Well, and
it would still be strong, but it wouldn't be like, he wouldn't be able to be like, well, I mean, we just keep winning it. So,
well, if Oregon had won in the Pac-12 when they had their multiple cracks, and Washington outside of in the early 90s, and USC had their run, but that was in the early 2000s. They hadn't done anything since then. So the Pac-12 schools weren't winning titles. The Big 12 schools weren't winning titles. Oklahoma was 0 for life since 2000 and their last title. I mean, they had so many opportunities to win national championships and failed or came up short every single time. Texas on a couple of occasions. How much does that change things? I think it changes things a little bit because all of a sudden you're going, hey, there's like 4 more titles here that weren't there otherwise. But instead, those were Alabama again, and Florida again, and Auburn, and
LSU.
And LSU. I mean, LSU beat Oklahoma, Florida beat Oklahoma, Alabama beat Texas, so on and so forth. So, if TCU has a better showing, I don't know that really changes anything because the hay was already out of the barn at that point with Oklahoma and Texas. And even if Oklahoma and Texas won those titles, Paul, maybe that doesn't matter, but the absence of anything from USC post-Pete Carroll or anybody else in the pack actually winning the whole thing, nobody minus past Texas in 05 in the Big 12. And then in the ACC, you had Clemson and Florida State. But even Clemson starting to tail off, and Florida State, it's been a while. So, it's a scenario where they went out and won, and that's all you can do. And so last night I was thinking about like all the reaction to the agreement about the college football playoff payouts, and a lot of people, this is the death knell. They just signed their own death warrant. And I understand that sentiment, but I also ask you, like I asked everybody at the end of the show today, give me their alternative. What else were they going to hold out? Were they going to say, hey, you do what we want or we're not going to be in the playoff? You think they're going to go, oh, my God, sorry, Brett Yormark, here, have $20 million more to spread. like the alternative is something that is a mystery to me, and I would love to hear what that could have even have been. Because last week I was saying, yeah, if you feel like you've got a legit argument, dig your heels in and fight this thing, because you don't know how many more times you're going to be able to fight. But Paul, here's the deal. The other question that I pose when talking about, if you have a legitimate case and a legitimate gripe and a legitimate chance to fight this, you have to fight this format. You have to fight the AQs. You've got to fight parts of this. Clearly, they lost on every single category, basically, from what we know so far. So the question that I really had was, you got to fight, but you got to fight if you know one thing in particular, and that is, if you threaten to break off, not them threatening to break off like they've done 1,000 times at this point through their own words or through the media, we know that that's always something that they are now using as like this looming threat, or do what we want or we're going to break off. So your alternative, if you were the Big 12 or the ACC, which again with the ACC, it's so hard to really talk about them in full because it's so shaky. Like it's not like they're all on the same page together and working together. They're clearly not. They're clearly in a moment of division. So I don't know how strong you are to really counter attack anyways. But the question I think boils down to with the whole playoff thing and just kind of in general, if you're just the Big 12, for example, do you have any sway to sit there and go, we don't want to do that, we're not going to do this, or we'll threaten to hold out? Or even, as some people have tried to put out there, or we mentioned before, you break off and do your own thing, or you threaten not to be a part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, my question was, do you make more money breaking off and doing your own thing, or do you make more money staying pat where you are and eating the S that's shoveled to you? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they're better staying pat where they are and eating the S that's shoveled to them. Mm-hmm. And that's a harsh reality for some people to accept. I've never been under the illusion that they are the Big 12 on par with those other two. I think the way the payouts are structured, like number 4 is about right, given this current state of the ACC. If the ACC falls apart, then you're a number 3. I don't know what that means, but we had our question answered yesterday. They are still better off, financially at least, access-wise, taking what they can get versus fighting back. And so you wonder why they're not fighting back. Well, the alternative must not have been very good. So you take what you can get. And again, that's not something that people want to accept. And I understand that, but that's the reality of it. I mean, if there was a better alternative, you would go and jump at it. But right now, as an entity, you are better off getting your one automatic qualifier and your 4th place money and then going out and trying to earn more versus thinking that you have the ability to go off and go, you know what, we're going to break away ourselves and we'll do something on our own. And so that's why we are where we are. There's 2 voices in the room that matter. Everybody else can say what they want to say, but ultimately, Greg Sankey and the rest of the crew are going to do what they want and get what they want in the end. And going back to the winning thing, I was looking at the playoff format, and I saw too amongst the comments, well, this is basically going to be the SEC Big Ten Invitational, this 12, 14 team format, and that is going to be the case. And you can see where automatic qualifiers wise, letting that open, you're going to have 5 teams maybe any given year from the SEC or Big Ten, and then there will be a little sprinkling. But last year, for example, in an expanded format, do you know how many teams the Big 12 would have gotten in? They would have still gotten probably 1.
Yeah.
It would have been Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Because Oklahoma State had 3 losses going into the Texas game, including a horrific non-conference loss and a blowout, ugly loss late in the year to UCF.
Yeah.
So in my way of thinking, you don't deserve to be in the playoff. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to be in the playoff, if you want to have more spots, and I'm not talking about Oklahoma State specifically, I'm talking about whoever's number 2, because you are facing the threat that you're going to get your champion in, and then beyond that, I can see why people think you should have taken the 2 automatic qualifiers because you automatically get those 2 teams. But in most years, if you want to have that second team or that third team, your teams have to win, man. That's what it all comes back to. You can't complain that, well, we'd only get 1 in and they're getting 6 in. Well, their 6 teams have 2 losses or less. The team playing for your conference title just took its 4th loss in the championship game. Mm-hmm. And had 2 awful losses. Mm-hmm. So don't lose those games. And you won't have the problem of, oh, man, we only got 1 in. It all comes back to winning, and those other conferences haven't won enough. And the ones that have been able to build up their pile of gold and their TV rights. And we're at a point now where, there is that definitive separation, and part of it's just tradition and history, but part of it's winning as well. And the only thing you can do from here on out, if you're the Big 12 and the ACC, again, asterisk next to them because who knows, but all you can do is go and win. And look, when you get two teams in the conference title game, don't have one of them that's 3 or 4 losses hanging over their head. Like, have a couple teams with one loss, and they're probably both going to get in. So I think there's a lot of fear-mongering going on, but there's also a lot of just reality that you need to look at and go, yeah, like there's not the level of contenders there, and so to change that, teams have to be better, and that's all you can really do because you're not overnight just going to stumble upon a Bill Gates who's going to fund you like the others are being funded. So all you can do is go out and win, and the problem with that, more than anything, is that it's going to be harder than ever to do that. So it's quite the scenario and the environment right now, and man, it is going to be fascinating to continue to see how this all unfolds.
There you go. That's the dragon, folks, right there.
Man,
breathing fire. And it's true. Like, everything you said was true, Craig. I mean, there's not even speculation in what you said. Like, it's just, this is where it's going down the tracks because, again, the alternative, and you'll hear Dennis Dodd talk about this in a minute when we have him, like, he believes that the scenario of bluff calling was very real. Like, if it wasn't just the ACC and Big 12, if everyone had gotten together and said, look, quit with your BS, this is nonsense, what are you going to do? And they're like, oh, well, you guys know we've been meeting together without you for like 2 months now.
Right.
And we have a plan for that. So Greg Sankey's always said they could have their own playoff.
Who are the TV networks most in bed with?
Yeah.
Who are they going to choose? ESPN, who's basically, we're the SEC, and then every other network says we're the Big Ten, and then we're also some of these other things, but where is the most money invested? Folks, the TV networks are on the side of them as well. So
the TV networks are actually a little bit more in the middle, but shaded towards them because they also are like, what Greg Sankey is betting on and what the Big Ten will be betting on is that no one would care if the other teams in the country were not involved in this.
Right.
Which I think ESPN is wary of doing.
I don't think that they believe that fully.
Yeah, because they don't they might be willing to in some kind of crazy money grab to save money and push off and see double down on all the the big things if ESPN and Fox just said, here's what we want. We want the SEC, we want the Big Ten. We'll take whatever, other teams kind of fall into that. And then we want, the NFL, the NBA, all the stuff that we know gets ratings for sure, as opposed to this other stuff that just kind of fills time to them, then I could see that scenario eventually happening. But they also know that, if you're going to cut off, 2/3 of the country from college football.
From relevancy in some ways.
Yeah, from relevancy in college football, that's not going to play well for your television ratings.
Right.
Yeah, and it's happened.
It's not going to play well for ESPN Plus when you want all of this catalog of games and whatnot. But, they themselves have played a role in the figures that they've doled out. There's been clear differences in the money offered to certain conferences. So, yeah, I think you're right about ESPN. I don't think they're trying to, kill a league. I know the whole pack thing might be different for people, but they still need inventory.
I think, look, they weren't trying to kill the pack, but they weren't going, the pack wasn't negotiating in good faith,
right.
in reasonable terms. They told the pack what they were worth.
They tried to sign them.
They tried to sign them.
Yeah.
And then the pack just kept on with this, circle of
we know better than you. We know, the circle of arrogance is what it was.
It's we know what we're worth, and you're like, okay, well, we're telling you what we can pay you, and we're willing to pay you, and what that our formulas tell you, so you can take that or not. And then they then they come and he comes with an Apple TV deal, and all the ones are like, well, why are we in charge of making Apple TV people sign up? Isn't that Apple's job? This isn't a bringer show here. We're the attraction. We're headliners. And so that's why the pack is dead, not because of ESPN or Fox or anybody else, because they didn't read the tea leaves.
We killed the pack. Haven't you read Twitter?
Yeah, we did.
Hey, I'll take credit for it. Y'all think that I have that kind of sway, then by all means, I'm the killer of the Pac-12.
Believe me, I wake up in the morning and I had a systematic thing.
Yeah.
I was like
I could use a good nickname.
I was like Jean Reno in The Professional.
Right. But no, they had their chance, and had the pack sign a TV deal, then the what ifs continue on. They don't really matter at this point because they didn't, and they are now where they are. And I know a lot of Washington State and Oregon State fans that I've seen are like celebrating that they're now like, haha, Big 12 and ACC teams. I think there's still a little bit to play out, but I can understand that sentiment. Although I think it's such misguided anger on, like, it's so weird how I think the most masterful job of manipulation this entire time is how it's very clearly been two leagues making all the moves, and yet every time they make a move to kill one of the others or hurt one of the others turn on each other. It's like our politicians do so masterfully.
Yeah.
Is they do all this just arrogant, pompous, greedy stuff right in front of our faces, and then they just flip this little, sentence that gets everybody to just turn on each other and not pay attention. It's like the Pac wants to blame the Big 12 for killing them, it's like, who took USC and UCLA? Who took Oregon and Washington?
Yeah.
How did this all start? Who took Oklahoma and Texas? But it's so wild to me, like how Wazoo fan wants to be mad at Oak State fan and not at like Michigan fan. And it's like they had way more to do with, or their league had. But anyways, that's fine. That's partially Twitter as well. But that's also too like the political manipulations that have occurred throughout this whole ordeal. That's been one of the more bizarre but very real-life political kind of things that I've seen where you just get the people fighting amongst themselves and don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain that's making all these moves and continues to. And so, I mean, be mad at whoever you want to be mad at. I think everybody's in a state of like just what is going on. And yesterday provided a little bit of clarity. And, based on the ominous tones of Greg Sankey and some unnamed AD out of the SEC again today in regards to, I think it was the basketball tournament, and there's various other quotes that have crept out. We're in for more change and more of whatever this looks like moving forward. I don't know, but all I know is that we're in a very interesting time right now, and it made me think also last night about Bob Thompson, and when we had him on so regularly, there's always something that bothered me with his interviews towards the end. And I never really dwelled on it too much because it's just, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But he was always very ominous in talking about how this wasn't done. Mm-hmm. And he never got specifics. He never got into specifics. But I think you'll remember of like, we'd be talking about the future and what's this look like? Is it going to settle down? He's like, he would mention, I think people are using the word like the culling of the herd, but he was talking more about what's the proper word for it, like more of a trimming down.
Yeah, culling.
Yeah, but that's not the word he used, but it was something along those lines. And it was very vague as to what he was talking about because you're like, well, who would that possibly? Oh, the ACC. Obviously, that makes some sense. But now you look back at those quotes again, and it's like, no, he knew there was way more, even more than that going on, more outside of the ACC. And so those quotes, ominous at the time that didn't really dig into, those are coming back into my head and making a lot more sense now. The foreshadowing, I guess, is the best word for it because you see the trimming and the continued possibilities for even more trimming that's going on. So yeah, man, it's a wild time, and I just every day brings something new. That's for sure.
Absolutely. When we come back.